Welcome everyone to our deep dive into water quality and filtration. We're going to explore what's really in our water and how we can make sure it's healthy and pure. We've got tons of research articles and charts all about this, so
Sounds like a real deep dive.
yeah, it is. We're going to try to cover everything from those hidden contaminants to choosing the right filter for you.
It's amazing how much we need clean water, but most people don't even think about what's really in it.
Right. And that's why we're doing this, to help uncover those hidden things and help you guys make the best choices for your health. So first, what contaminants are we even talking about here?
Well, the main ones we're concerned with fall into four categories: microbiological, chemical, physical, and radiological. And each of those has its own challenges and risks.
Okay, so let's break those down.
Okay.
Microbiological, that means the tiny living things, right?
Mhm.
Like bacteria and viruses.
Exactly. Things like E. coli bacteria, which usually means there's fecal contamination, or viruses like norovirus, which can cause stomach bugs. Yeah. And these usually get into the water through sewage overflows, or leaking septic systems, or agricultural runoff.
Okay, so even if my water looks and tastes fine, it could still have these little things in it.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to understand where your water comes from and how it might be contaminated. Because without a good filter, some of those things can cause mild discomfort all the way up to serious infections.
And those infections are especially bad for the elderly and children.
Right.
Okay, so what about chemical contaminants? I imagine those can be pretty bad too.
Yeah, they can. We're talking about things like pesticides and herbicides from farms,
Yeah.
or industrial chemicals that leak into groundwater, and even heavy metals like lead.
Lead.
Yeah, lead can get in the water from old pipes and plumbing
Oh,
fixtures.
wow. Lead is really bad for kids, especially babies. It can cause problems with the brain development and affect their health for their whole lives. So how can I even tell if my water has lead in it?
You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. The only way to know is to test your water.
So if I'm concerned about lead, I should definitely get my water tested.
Yeah, you can buy a DIY test kit. Or, for the most accurate results, send a sample to a certified lab.
Okay, so we've got tiny bacteria and scary chemicals. What about physical contaminants? Is that just a fancy way of saying dirt?
Sort of. Dirt and sediment are included, but physical contaminants means anything you can see that affects how the water looks,
Like,
like rust from old pipes or sand and grit from well water, and even those tiny pieces of plastic that can get into water.
you. Yeah, sometimes after a heavy rain, my water gets cloudy. Is that because of physical contaminants?
It could be. When it rains a lot, the sediment in reservoirs and water mains can get stirred up. It's usually harmless, but it can make your water taste or smell a bit different. It could also mean there's something wrong with your plumbing.
So even if it's just an appearance thing, I should still look into it.
That's probably a good idea.
Okay, so the last one is radiological contaminants. That one sounds pretty intense. Are we talking Chernobyl levels of dangers here?
No, thankfully not. Usually radiological contaminants are at really low levels and not much of a risk. We're mainly talking about naturally occurring radioactive elements, like radon and uranium.
Radon, like the radon they test for in basements.
Yep, that's the one. These elements can seep into groundwater from rocks.
Ah, so it depends on the geology of the area.
Exactly, but sometimes industries or old uranium mines can contribute to radiological contamination as well.
Good to know. I'll check with my local water supplier about that. So it seems like there are a ton of things that can make our water unsafe to drink, from microscopic bacteria to heavy metals to radioactive elements. It's starting to sound like a sci-fi movie. Should we all just start drinking bottled water?
Hold on, before you do that, there are some really effective ways to get rid of these contaminants and make sure your water is clean and safe to drink. That's where water filtration comes in.
All right. Let's talk about how to filter our water. What are some of the ways we can do that?
Well, there are a bunch of different filtration methods. Each one is designed to get rid of specific contaminants. So it's all about finding the right tool for the job.
So I can't just buy any old filter.
Right. It really depends on what's in your water.
Makes sense. So let's start with one I've heard of a lot, activated carbon filters. How do those work and what are they good at getting rid of?
Activated carbon filters are kind of like the all-around good guys of water filtration. They work through adsorption, so the contaminants are pulled towards the surface of the carbon and stick there. That keeps them out of your water.
Interesting. So it's not really like a strainer, more like a magnet for the bad stuff,
Exactly. The activated carbon is really porous, so it has a ton of surface area to trap contaminants. It's really good at getting rid of chlorine.
which is added to most city water, right?
Right, to kill bacteria. But it can make the water taste and smell kind of funky.
Ah, so that's how filters make my water taste better. I've also seen filters that use carbon, some other stuff. What's the point of that?
Good question. Combining carbon with other filter media lets you target a bunch of different contaminants.
So what else do they put in there?
Well, for example, some filters have a sediment pre-filter.
What does that do?
That gets rid of bigger particles like sand and rust, which can clog up the carbon and make it less effective.
So it's like a multi-stage defense system.
Yeah.
I like it. So what about things like lead and pesticides? Can activated carbon get rid of those too?
It can help reduce some pesticides and other volatile organic compounds, but it's not that great for heavy metals like lead.
Oh,
For those, you would need something more heavy duty, like reverse osmosis.
reverse osmosis. That sounds pretty intense.
It is. Imagine a membrane with incredibly tiny pores,
Hmm.
so small that only water molecules can pass through.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
So you push the water through this membrane under pressure, and all the contaminants like salts, heavy metals, even some bacteria and viruses get left behind.
Wow, so it's like an ultrafine filter?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Reverse osmosis is really good at getting rid of a lot of different things.
So it seems like that would be the best option.
It's popular, but it does have a downside. Some people say it removes beneficial minerals from the water.
Is that true?
It does remove most minerals, good and bad.
Hmm.
But most people get enough minerals from their diet, and some reverse osmosis systems even have special cartridges that add minerals back in after the water is filtered.
Okay, so it's about figuring out what's important to you. Now, what about UV purifiers? How do those work?
UV purifiers use ultraviolet light to kill microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, and protozoa.
How does light kill those things?
Well, the UV light scrambles their DNA, so they can't reproduce and make you sick.
Huh, interesting. So would you recommend a UV purifier for well water?
Yeah, that's a great option if you have a well, or if you live somewhere with known water quality issues.
So we've got carbon for taste, reverse osmosis for the really bad stuff, and UV for the microscopic bugs. It feels like we're building our own water treatment plant here. But how do we know what's right for us? How do we pick the right filter?
You're right, there are so many choices, it can be confusing. That's why it's so important to get your water tested.
So I know exactly what's in it.
Yep, it's like a blood test for your water. You need to know what's in it before you can decide how to treat it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so once we know what's in our water, how do we pick the right filter system? What else do we need to consider?
You've got to think about your lifestyle and your needs.
Like what?
Well, for example, do you need a whole house system that filters all the water coming in? Or do you just want to filter your drinking water with an under-sink filter?
Yeah, I guess a whole house system would be a bigger investment.
Definitely. They're more complicated to install and usually need a professional to do it, but the good thing is that they filter all the water in your house.
So even the water I use to shower.
Even that. So if you're worried about chlorine or other things hurting your skin and hair, a whole house system might be a good option.
That's a good point. Some people are really sensitive to chlorine, so I could see that being a good option for them.
Exactly. It's all about figuring out what's right for you in your situation. And don't forget about certifications.
Certifications, what are those?
You want to make sure any water filter you buy has been tested and certified
Why?
to make sure it meets certain standards.
Okay, that makes sense.
There are organizations like the NSF and the WQA. They have really strict testing rules to make sure the filters actually do what they say they do.
That's good to know. I wouldn't want to waste my money on a filter that doesn't work. So we've talked about the different types of contaminants, the different filtration methods, and whether to get a whole house system or just filter at the point of use. And certifications. What else should we know before we buy a filter?
You need to think about maintenance too. You want a system that's easy to maintain, and you should be okay with the cost of replacement cartridges.
Oh, right. I didn't think about that. How often do you have to replace filters?
It depends on the filter and how much water you use, but usually every 3 to 6 months. And some systems like reverse osmosis have other parts that need replacing too.
Like what?
The membrane, for example. That usually lasts for a couple of years.
So it's important to factor in all those costs when you're comparing filters.
For sure.
Okay. So how much should I expect to pay for a good water filter? Are we talking hundreds of dollars? Thousands?
It really varies. A simple pitcher filter can be a few dollars, but a whole house system can be thousands.
Yikes.
The best thing to do is research the different options and compare prices.
Right. Find something that fits your budget. Now,
Yeah.
I know we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, but I'm curious about something. Is it true that water quality changes depending on the season?
Absolutely. All sorts of things can affect water quality, like heavy rain or snow melt.
How do those things affect water quality?
Well, they can increase the amount of sediment and runoff that goes into the water supply, which
Oh.
can affect the taste and smell, and even change the levels of contaminants.
Huh. So even if I have a good filter,
Yeah,
I might still notice my water tastes different at different times of year.
that's right.
And it's not just stuff like the weather, is it?
Nope. Even the temperature of the water can change things.
Really?
Yeah, like in the summer when the water is warmer. The chlorine can react with organic matter in the water and create byproducts, which can make the water taste or smell bad.
That's so interesting. So many things to think about. So other than filters, are there any easy things we can do to make our tap water taste better?
Sure, you can let your tap run for a couple of minutes before you use it for drinking or cooking.
Why would I do that?
That flushes out any water that's been sitting in your pipes,
Ah, okay.
because that water can taste metallic or have an odor.
Good to know.
You can also try chilling your water. Cold water usually masks any unpleasant flavors.
Makes sense.
And if it still doesn't taste great, you can add a slice of lemon or cucumber.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So we've talked about how to filter water at home, but what about people who live off the grid? What are their options?
For off-grid living, you need a filter that's portable and reliable. Gravity filters are a good option because you don't need electricity or plumbing for them.
How do they work?
The water slowly filters through several layers, which gets rid of bacteria, protozoa, and sediment.
So it's a self-contained water purification system.
Pretty much.
Cool. Now, what about emergency situations? What kind of filter should I get for that?
In an emergency, you need something lightweight and easy to use. And it should be able to treat water from different sources, like lakes and rivers.
Or even rainwater?
Right. Ceramic filters are a good choice.
Why those?
They're durable, effective, and pretty cheap.
Okay.
And you can also get those little water purification tablets, the ones with chemicals to kill bacteria and viruses.
It's good to be prepared.
Mm.
Okay, so we talked about filters for at home, for off-grid living, and for emergencies. Now, I want to ask about something I've been seeing everywhere, alkaline water. Is it really as good as everyone says? I've been seeing alkaline water everywhere, all these ads saying it can do all this amazing stuff. Like, what's the deal with that?
Alkaline water has definitely been getting a lot of buzz lately. People are saying it can do things like neutralize acid in your body,
Huh.
or improve hydration, or even slow down aging.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? So is it a miracle drink or is it just hype?
Well, the science is still kind of iffy on it. There have been some studies, small studies, that suggest there might be some benefits,
Like what?
like helping athletes maintain a better pH balance,
Yeah.
or reducing the thickness of blood.
Interest.
But we need more research to know for sure if it's really better than regular water.
So it's not a cure-all, but there might be some perks. So what even is alkaline water? What makes it different from regular water?
It's all about the pH.
pH.
Yeah, the pH scale measures how acidic or alkaline something is.
Right, like battery acid is very acidic and baking soda is alkaline?
Exactly. And a pH of 7 is neutral. Alkaline water has a higher pH than regular water,
How high?
usually between 8 and 9.
Okay, so higher pH means more alkaline.
Right.
But how does water become alkaline?
A couple of ways. Some bottled alkaline waters are naturally alkaline because of the minerals in the source, but others are treated to make them alkaline.
Like how?
Well, one way is through ionization.
What is that?
It's a process that separates the acidic and alkaline components of the water.
So you end up with alkaline drinking water.
Right.
Now, I've seen ads for those water ionizer machines, too.
Yeah, those are pretty popular.
Do they actually work?
They do increase the pH of the water, but they can be really expensive.
Are there cheaper options?
Sure, you can get alkaline water pitchers or filters. Those add minerals to the water to raise the pH.
Okay, so there are a bunch of different options. But honestly, I'm not going to carry around a pH meter to test my water. Is there any way to just tell if water is alkaline?
Not really. You can't tell by looking at it or tasting it. The only way to know is to test it.
With a test strip or a meter.
Right.
So it's not like I'll drink alkaline water and suddenly feel more alkaline or something.
Not really. Our bodies are actually really good at regulating our own pH.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not about changing my body's pH, but just about drinking water that tastes good.
Right.
Are there any natural ways to make my water more alkaline? Or at least make it taste better?
One thing you can try is adding lemon or lime to your water.
That sounds refreshing.
It is. And it might slightly increase the pH too.
Really?
Yeah, lemons are acidic. But once your body digests them, they have an alkalizing effect.
Interesting. So a little squeeze of lemon can add flavor and maybe even some health benefits.
Exactly.
Well, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about something else, something really important, the environmental impact of the water we drink. We've talked a lot about filtering our water,
Yeah.
but what about the bigger picture?
That's a great point. Choosing to filter our tap water and drink from reusable bottles is a huge help to the environment.
How so?
Well, it means we're using less plastic.
Less plastic waste.
Right. And it lowers our carbon footprint and helps us conserve water.
That's amazing. So by filtering our water, we're not just making it cleaner for ourselves, but we're also helping the planet.
Exactly.
And it's not just about the environment, it's about our health too.
Hmm.
We all know we need to stay hydrated.
It's super important. Water helps regulate our body temperature, transport nutrients, flush out waste, and keep our organs working properly.
Yeah, I always feel better when I'm drinking enough water.
Yeah.
But how much water should we be drinking every day?
It depends on the person, their age, activity level, the climate, their overall health. But a good rule of thumb is 8 glasses a day.
8 glasses.
Right. And remember, other drinks like tea and juice count too?
Good to know. And if you want to make those 8 glasses more enjoyable, all those flavor tips we talked about can help.
For sure.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We've talked about the things that can contaminate our water and the different ways to filter it. We even got into the details of alkaline water. And most importantly, we talked about how to stay hydrated and make eco-friendly choices.
It's been a great deep dive into the world of water. And with all this information, you can make the best decisions for you and your family. So you can have clean, safe, and sustainable water.
Exactly. Clean water is precious. It's essential for a healthy life. So next time you drink a glass of water, think about everything it took for that water to get to you and what you can do to protect this vital resource. And if you're ready to get a water filter, check out the links in our bio and episode description. We put together a list of our top recommendations. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.